Good evening, everyone. So I hope you've had a good session so far, and I'll try my best to keep it quick, and I'll do a quick demo at the end so that it doesn't get too monotonous just with me speaking. So my name is Shabbir Mookhtiar, and I'm representing a company called Tridat. So we're part of a group of company where one of our group companies called ICOG is into artificial intelligence and how to apply artificial intelligence to the e-learning field. So I'll be talking a bit about that and basically covering some historical aspects as well, how learning has evolved over the ages, what our expectations are of learning in the future, and what our vision is of the future as well. So I guess we all use some sort of e-learning platform at our workplace. So most probably everyone's done a GDPR course most recently. So I think we're all fairly familiar with how e-learning platforms work. It's been there from day one. Maybe you've done a time management course or I don't know, political correctness course or that sort of a thing. So starting the slide. So it looks like more than one of us had the same idea. Starting off with sort of what Hollywood and sci-fi films bring. So basically, Hollywood sci-fi tends to give us a peek into the future in terms of what our desired vision of the future is. And it's various things, like if you think about Minority Report for user interfaces, and we're not quite there with moving our hands around, but nearly there in terms of stuff like Connect, which understands your hand movement and possibly does a little bit of what Minority Report thought we'd be doing in the future. Similarly, in the film Matrix, there's a little piece which really intrigues me about the way we thought of learning in 2000 or 99, whenever it came out. And there's a scene where Neo's basically been plugged out of the Matrix. He's in the Nebuchadnezzar with Morpheus, and then he has to learn all these cool skills, one after the other. So Morpheus basically picks up, I think it might be a disc called martial arts, puts it in, and then both of them plug themselves in and get into this what could be called today some sort of a VR, AR kind of a world. And to cut a long story short, at the end of it, Neo has acquired the skill of martial arts, and he's really good at it. So that's the sort of future which Hollywood predicted of learning. But as AI is evolving more and more as every day goes on, it may not end up looking how Morpheus and Neo used it in the film The Matrix, but there could be other more interesting ways in which it could be used. So moving on from sort of the escapist world of Hollywood into the real world, which is called the workplace for most of us. Basically, the modern workplace consists of three generations of people: the baby boomers, the millennials, and Gen X. So we're all very busy, and we don't always take out enough time to upgrade our skills and to learn. So I've got some stats there. It's courtesy a Deloitte study. Basically, the typical work week, in a typical work week, an employee would only ever end up focusing on training and development for roughly about 24 minutes. But when you think about the number of times they take their phone out of, or any of us take our phones out of a pocket, the study says we do it, sort of nearly every few minutes, and we're online on various social media about 27 times a day. So there's clearly an area there where basically learning providers have an option to engage with various users in such a way that every time they take their phone out, maybe a little tip comes up which tells them something about a new skill which they're trying to learn. So it's not just that, it's different people have different styles of learning and picking up things. Some of us like watching YouTube videos and learning things, others like reading books, and then yet there are others who like listening to podcasts or audiobooks and so on. So the key thing out here is to really personalize the learning to each individual learner's taste. It's also extremely essential to understand the learning cognition and tailoring content to suit the learner's level of understanding as well. So taking a step back from specifically learning, AI is a bit of a double-edged sword. So on the one side, we have the promise of optimization and innovation And on the other side, there's fears about personnel redundancy and concerns about singularity and ethics and morals, and how how a human would apply his intelligence in a crisis scenario as against how an artificial sentient being would apply it. So when you look at it from the perspective of the workplace, there's a lot of fear mongering in the press about how people are going to lose their jobs because of AI and automation. So what's the best way for the people to make sure that in spite of technological revolutions, keep ourselves constantly updated and make sure that as much as we can, we're not affected by such things. So basically it's extremely important for each of us to constantly upgrade our skills using various learning mechanisms and make sure that we continue to provide value to our organizations. From the technology side, we need to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to learn and upgrade their skills without incurring much of a cost, where they don't go to a Prince 2 exam, spend $5,000 over 5 days and upgrade them. So it has to be easy to use at a low cost, or at a means which is effective for organizations to roll it out within their companies without having to rely on very expensive courses and so on. So let's move on. Basically, another Deloitte study done by George Burson shows us how e-learning's progressed over there, or learning or e-learning has progressed since the late 90s to today. So we started off with a very online catalog, kind of online university sort of thing. So I think with most technologies, even with mobile phones, where we essentially tried to replicate the PC on a phone to start with, and then it sort of started getting a bit better, and eventually the iPhone launched, and that's when phones actually took off. Similarly, in the learning space, we started off with a very online university kind of a thing with a catalog of courses which wasn't necessarily personalized and intelligent enough to cater to every individual's personal needs. So we went from that sort of a format to a talent management system where it looked at fast tracking a person's career within the organization. And now we're in an age where with various providers who are trying to provide continuous learning through mobile apps, so you can learn on the go essentially. There's YouTube, which provides free videos, and you have digital learning and so on. So what's the next step? What's really going to make learning easy and palatable in a way like it was for Neo in the film Matrix? So I think the way AI is progressing, we could have a digital tutor which talks to us, understands what our learning patterns and behaviors are, and then tailoring the content to the user. Okay, so this is where our solution comes in. So the solution is called ICOG, and it's a learning system which provides assisted learning intelligence, and it's aware of how you use the system, and it automatically personalizes the experience such that you get the most benefit out of it without you scrolling through rows and rows of video without actually engaging with any of the content. So if the system realizes you're just scrolling through videos and not actually engaging with any of the content, it'll run a different query in such a way that the content gets freshened up a bit and potentially see what your inputs are. So what else? What other things do we need in the future to make sure we can learn really well? So it's not just personalization. Let's say you've tried taking on a topic and you've tried many times, but you're not quite able to get the desired results that you need. So what's the most logical thing you'd do? The next thing would be to potentially speak to a coach or a mentor who'd give you the right guidance for you to be able to progress within that aspired skill. So in ICOG, we have a feature where there's a bit of a learning social network where not just can you talk to a coach or a mentor who can then suggest various things to you to help you progress, but you also get a chance to look at what your colleagues are learning, what your colleagues are recommending to you, and so on. So I'll quickly switch to the actual product. So the way the product starts up is by asking, there's a bit of a setup screen where it tries to hook into your company's HR system, and it finds out for your role what are your core competencies. It builds those up within the competency list, and it also asks you what your aspired competency levels are, and if you are interested in sort of progressing further in your career, maybe you want to go from being an individual contributor to a leader, what are the sort of skills you'd require for that. And it puts all of them together, and then it'll start recommending courses to you. So this is a dashboard where this particular user's got selected leadership skills, conflict management, strategic thinking, business acumen, impacts and influence, so on and so forth. And one of the aspired competencies is execution skills as well. So most probably they are into sales. These are the sort of, so the way we've structured it is initially we show the feeds based on all of the competencies selected, and then you can view more. And what this tool does is, so we understand that typically larger organizations can subscribe to, for example, LinkedIn Learning or a Plural site, but those subscriptions can be quite expensive. So with our tool, what we're doing is there's a whole host of content on the open web using, they could be TED Talks or Harvard Business Review talks, or some courses from Stanford, and so on and so forth. So not only do we hook into some of the paid proprietary learning solutions, but we also look into sort of the open web in terms of what's the best content which we can harness from the open web. So then I spoke about the aspect about coaches as well. So there's a lot of feeds which you get which are shared by your coaches. So coaches could be able to share certain learning videos with a certain group. And there's another feed where we're showing everything which has been shared by your peers and recommended by your peers. So talking about the coaches, for example, this person had an issue and about leadership skills, and they wanted to understand what servant leadership meant. So they contacted William Brown and asked them, I need help in understanding servant leadership. And William Brown has said to them that, let's connect face to face, but in the meantime, you can have a look at these courses, which could give you a bit more context about it before you come and meet me. So another way for, sort of not just using, machines and artificial intelligence, but getting the human into the loop to make sure if there are any gaps in the learning process that can be filled in. Okay. So consumption to application. So what's I guess for most organizations, it's a case of what's in it for me. So the way ICOG exposes bite-sized information on the users based on the user's schedule and on their personal preference list, it means they're learning on the go, and as it becomes a lot easier for them to assimilate that information, which finally would lead to a more productive worker at the workplace. Okay, so I guess the more interesting AI bits. So how are we doing some of this stuff? Basically, we've got, based on the competency selected, we've got AI bots which would basically go on the open web and crawl for relevant content depending on each user's needs. It's not completely automated. If the organization wants, they can leave it completely automated, but we allow an organization to filter out any content which they don't want, or there may be particular sites which they don't want coming in. So that option is there as well. The recommendation engine, which looks at the competencies and shows up the various feeds, uses statistical machine learning. So this is implemented using TensorFlow libraries underneath. With any AI system to be useful, you have to train it with the right sort of data sets. So we've used generic data sets from the open community, but it's not just that. We've also created our internal data sets in order to make sure that whatever we get as an output from the recommendation engine is quite useful. There's a couple of things which is in the works. So I spoke about sort of a personalized tutor. So we're doing a dialogue-based interaction system which would simulate a personal tutor. So if you think about sort of in your own experiences when you've learned something really well, so it could be your mother, the best teacher you've learned from, and the sort of experience you had with them. Using AI, we're trying to simulate that experience. So another cool thing which we're trying to work on at the minute is, so at the minute we're showing videos as they are, and we're relying a lot on the metadata which is attached to these videos, but we've now got the ability to, using computer vision, to analyze these videos and understand what's being said in those videos, and get the context around those videos. So let's say there's a talk, there's a 1 hour long talk about leadership, for example, and if someone wants to understand leadership, but specifically they're looking at vertical integration, so they don't want to scrub through the 1 hour video and try and find the right point. So using computer vision, we're analyzing the video, generating metadata, and ensuring that those sort of tags which would basically highlight when a speaker talks about, for example, vertical integration, that's ready. So if someone searches for vertical integration, we wouldn't show up the video, entire 1 hour video to them. We just skip directly to the point where the speaker talks about vertical integration. So we've deployed ICOG to a large manufacturing conglomerate, and we've seen great results from them. So immediately we started seeing 6+ minutes per day additional usage per employee compared to what they were doing with the standard current gen learning solution. And yeah, probably to wrap it up, just go back to the video. And so basically what happens is, you're trying to step up into a leadership role, but many others are trying to step up into that role as well. And if at an organizational level there's 5 people who are trying to understand how to become a manager and going for that one particular role, what's the best way to evaluate those 5 people apart from doing interviews and so on? So let's say all 5 of them have started understanding how leadership works, and they're doing videos and so on. But I guess the real thing is, though they've taken the courses and they've done the trainings, are they really able to apply those skills in the workplace, or even in a test sort of a thing? So within ICOG, we have the ability to ask questions every now and again and see, based on previous learnings, how much the user is able to grasp, and accordingly we come up with a score based on how many answers they've got right as such. Now this can be a bit subjective, so it's sort of an optional package which, depending on the organization, they may or may not want. But when you think about it, from those 5 people who are aspiring to move up a level into that leadership role, if only 2 of them actually through these tests are showing they have the abilities, and the others maybe have lots of room for improvement, then it gives another angle to the organization when they want to make such decisions. So I think that's about it from me. So yeah, thank you. Don't know if there's any questions or things from anyone. Sure.
Yeah, so ICOG, so does the algorithm take into consideration, or does it show the improvements that individuals had before and then after? And if you sort of works that out, because that would be very valuable, because taking it, learning something, my understanding of it before, I want to know if I've improved, and based upon this information, it'll be good to show that I've made considerable improvement whilst I've been using your platform.
Sure. So the system takes in sort of structured and unstructured data. So structured data could be some inputs from performance reviews, for example, where someone's been marked high enough on a particular skill, and then unstructured data is sort of HR and managers feeding into the system based on one-to-ones and regular catch-ups that they may be having. So depending on that, the score level would go up, and instead of, let's say, showing beginner level videos, it would start showing, or beginner level content, it would start showing a medium or intermediate or advanced level content. So that's the way it would sort of differentiate between someone who's a complete novice in a particular area as against someone who maybe has a certain amount of skill in that particular area.
No, I mean that if I was to start already using it,
Correct.
so after a while that I've interacted with it, would it then show my improvement? So after 10, 15 days, he went from 25% competency on one particular subject to now 50% competency.
Exactly. Yep. So it would. So if you look at this column, top 10 learners in leadership skills, it shows Richard Knight has got 123, and Siju has got 59, and so on. So you obviously start with like a lower score. Initially, start off with a 0, and then depending on the way the sort of learnings you do, that score would keep going higher and higher. So you would definitely see an improvement. Yep. Okay. Yep.
So do you have any sort of safeguards in the system to prevent gaming?
Okay, interesting question, but okay, yeah, I'm not 100% sure about it, but yeah, I can find out and get back to you on that. Yep. Yep.
I'm actually interested to find out how the digital tutor provides feedback or answers to user questions. Does it generate answers, or does it select answers from, say, a repository, for example?
To start with, it wouldn't generate answers, but it would, basically based on everything that the bots have crawled, it would look at that database and then, select the relevant information. Okay. Cool. Okay. Okay. Thanks, everyone.